Okay, so we're looking at this question here. It says use demand excuse me, use demand curves to illustrate the following types or degrees of price elasticity of demand. So we've got five scenarios here. We need to remember price elasticity of demand. This is how quantity demanded responds to changes in the price. Okay. When we say demand is elastic, we mean demand is sensitive to price changes. If we say demand is inelastic, then quantity demanded is not sensitive to price changes. So we're going to illustrate this with the graphs. So we're going to talk about perfectly elastic demand. This is where quantity demanded is very responsive to price changes. Okay. Here it is very responsive. If you increase the price even by 0.1%, you're going to lose all your customers. Okay, so this is the graph for perfectly elastic demand. We draw a graph here. We have price on the y-axis, quantity demanded on the x-axis. Then you just have the straight demand curve like this. All right. So here, price elasticity of demand, PED, equals infinity. So basically what this is saying is this. If you try to increase the price, let's say here, the price is 50 kwacha, okay? You try to increase the price to, let's even say 51.5 kwacha. What's going to happen is you're going to lose all your customers. Okay, let's say at 50 kwacha, you are selling, let's say 500 units of the good. But when you increase the price to 51.5 kwacha, you're going to lose all your customers. So your quantity demanded is going to drop to zero. Okay. If you try to increase the price, right? What happens is you're going to lose all your customers. Okay. You have no customers. That's what we mean is quantity demanded is very responsive to changes in price. All right. If you try to reduce the price, let's say from 50 kwacha to maybe 49 kwacha, you'll get an unlimited supply of customers. Okay. Everyone is going to come to you. All right. Everyone is going to come to you. So here we can even just say infinity here. Okay. You're going to capture the whole market if you drop the price. Okay. Because quantity demanded is very responsive to changes in price. Okay. So this is just a theoretical perspective. In actuality, it's rare to find goods that have demand that is perfectly elastic. This is just a theoretical point of view. So when demand is perfectly elastic, all right, then it means the demand is very responsive or very sensitive to price changes. You increase the price, you lose all your customers. You drop the price, you're going to get all the customers, an unlimited supply of customers. So it's very extreme. All right. The next, we're going to look at perfectly inelastic demand. In this case here, demand is not sensitive and it doesn't respond to changes in price. Okay, when demand is perfectly elastic, price, when just increasing the price, demand is not going to change. It's just going to stay the same. Okay, it is not sensitive to any price changes. So here on our graph, our demand curve is going to be a straight line going up like this here. Okay, here as D here. You can increase the price. Let's say the original price here is 50 kwacha. The original price is 50 kwacha here. And let's say for example, you're a patient, you're sick of a certain disease. Okay, every month you need to buy one packet of medicine. So let's just say quantity is one here. Okay. or let me make it better. You need 5 packets of medicine. Every month you need 5 packets of this medicine. All right. So even though the price of the medicine increases to even let's say 500 kwacha, you're still going to need these 5 packets of medicine. Okay. So the quantity demanded is not going to increase. Even though the price of medicine drops to let's say 1 kwacha, you're still going to need these 5 packets of medicine. All right. So when demand is perfectly inelastic, it does not respond to any changes in price. Okay. Yes, it doesn't respond any changes in price. Just like this here. Next, we're going to look at when demand is relatively elastic. So when demand is relatively elastic, it just means quantity demanded, how much people buy, is sensitive to price changes. Okay. Not as sensitive when demand is perfectly elastic, but it's just sensitive. Okay. So for example, goods that are relatively elastic, goods that have substitutes. Okay. If you increase, let's say for example, the soft drinks. Okay. If they increase the price of Coca-Cola, all right, people can go and buy other soft drinks. They just substitute the Coca-Cola with other soft drinks. So what happens? The quantity demanded for the Coca-Cola will drop by a big amount because people are going to substitute the Coca-Cola. Okay. If they lower the price of Coca-Cola by a small amount, people are going to come and start buying the Coca-Cola because it's cheaper than the other drinks. Okay. So relatively elastic just means quantity demanded is sensitive to changes in price. So our demand curve is just going to be relatively flat. Okay, it shouldn't be fully flat, but just relatively flat like this. Okay, so for example, if the price here is 50 kwacha, so at 50 kwacha, quantity demanded, let's say, is 500 units. So if, let's say, price is increased just by 1 kwacha, 51 kwacha, a small price increment, we're going to see how the quantity demanded gets affected. You find there's a big quantity demanded gets affected, the effect is greater than the price. The change in quantity demanded is greater than the change in price. Have you seen? Let's say quantity drops from 500 units to 100 units. Okay. So goods which are substitutes or goods that are not necessities, demand is relatively elastic because if the price is increased, either you can substitute the good or you can live without it. Okay. So here, as we've seen, price has just increased by 1 kwacha, but quantity demanded has dropped by 400 units. So when demand is relatively elastic, it means the change in quantity demanded is going to be greater than the change in price. Okay. A small price increment, let's say you increase price just by 1%, you find quantity demanded drops by 20%. This is an illustration of relatively elastic demand. Okay, quantity demanded, how much people buy, is sensitive to changes in price. So remember, goods that are not necessities or goods that are substitutes, demand is relatively elastic. Then relatively inelastic demand, it means quantity demanded, how much of the good is bought, doesn't is not sensitive to price changes. You can increase price by a big amount, but quantity demanded will just drop by a small amount. Okay, so graphically, you can put it like this. So you have a very steep demand curve like this, a very steep one, okay, which is showing quantity demanded is not sensitive to changes in price. Okay, so for example, the price here is 50 kwacha, the amount of quantity demanded is 500 units. This is how much the good is bought. Let's say if price increase doubles from 50 kwacha to 100 kwacha, price has doubled, okay, but what you notice is this: the quantity demanded doesn't change by a big amount. Let's say it just drops from 500 units to 480 units. Okay. The drop in quantity demanded is small as compared to the change in price. Okay. So, for example, if you can increase price by, let's say, even 50%, and you find quantity demanded can drop just by, let's say, even 2%. This is just an illustration. Okay. So when demand is relatively inelastic, it's not that sensitive to price changes. Okay. Goods that are necessities and goods that don't have substitutes, demand is usually relatively inelastic. For example, salt. Salt hasn't got any substitutes. So, for example, if there's one brand of salt that is being sold, if they double the price, people still need to use that salt. So they'll still buy the salt. Only few people might stop buying the salt, but others will continue buying the salt. Even when a good is a necessity, if you increase the price, people need that good to survive. All right. So they'll be forced to buy that good. During the time of Corona, all right, face masks and hand sanitizer was a necessity to survive. So it means if they increase the price of face masks and hand sanitizer, you are still supposed to buy them. So the amount of hand sanitizer and face mask that was bought wouldn't drop by a big amount if in case the price had to increase. Yes. So one thing we need to remember is when demand is relatively elastic, price elasticity of demand is greater than one. Okay. For relatively elastic. When demand is relatively inelastic, price elasticity of demand is less than one. Okay. And then finally, when demand is unitary elastic, meaning here if price increases by 1%, quantity demanded is going to drop by 1%. Okay. The change in quantity demanded matches the change in price. Okay. So you have, I would say, a 45-degree demand curve here, like this. Okay, 45-degree demand curve. This is unitary elastic. All right. The change in price is the same as the change in quantity demanded. Okay. Yes. So meaning if price is dropped by 20%, quantity demanded will increase by 20%. Yes. So this is how you draw these graphs. All right. And when demand is unitary elastic, the price elasticity of demand is 1. Okay. Yes.